Hi, it's Timo. Welcome to Norwich City Central.
Leeds 2, Norwich City 1. In recent years, Norwich City have had some good results against Leeds. Today was the day Leeds relegated Norwich, and Leeds go marching on, absolutely gutted with it and absolutely gutted with the season. I mean, this game didn't define the season. Norwich City for the past 28 games have not been good enough in every aspect and have been the worst team in the league. And despite some maybe dubious decisions against Norwich today, Leeds deserved the victory. They've been better than Norwich City throughout the whole of the season, and there's going to be some major questions asked of this group of players, but also how the football club is run from Stuart Webber and what Norwich City want from an owner. I don't think necessarily that after a 2-1 defeat, those big questions are the ones which need to be dealt with. But certainly looking at the recruitment on the pitch and the performance for the last 29 games have overall not been nowhere near good enough, and yet again Norwich City are staring down the barrel now of relegation. Leeds have relegated Norwich in all but name, and really disappointed with it. But credit to Leeds, they got promoted. They showed a little bit of ambition with a few big money signings in Rafinha and Dan James, and they've managed to stay up. Norwich, on the other hand, have not been brave enough with their money. This season we had £65 million to spend, and we spent it on a lot of few £1 million players rather than really go for the big players, and the recruitment's been nowhere near good enough yet again from a Norwich City perspective. But this time around we've had the money and we've absolutely blown it, and players like Aarons, Cantwell, players who had big fees attached to them are no longer there. Absolutely gutted. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section, and I think there'll be a lot of anger towards Stuart Webber and the owners and everyone connected with the club, because it's been nowhere near good enough yet again from a Norwich City perspective and a Norwich City season. And those big questions need to be addressed, because there's a less than a 1% chance Norwich City stay up from this position now. And you've got 3 weeks to wait, so that's a lot for Norwich City to ponder, isn't it? But yeah, really angry and disappointed, and I've never been more angry coming out of a game than Brentford, because that was a real kick in the teeth. And yet again, this Norwich City group of players I've never been so disinterested with a group of players ever at this football club. And the recent signings, no one's really been there. I'm just completely feel disenfranchised with these group of players. And I look at that result 3 years ago when we beat Leeds, and the likes of Rancic and Tribal and of course Buendia, and we had some real characters there, and a couple of those characters are still there, but just so many of these players aren't good enough. Kabak, Gibson, £8 million on Gibson. That midfield has been where Norwich City have suffered the most this season, and yet again lightweight. Our best midfielder this season, or best midfielder in recent weeks, certainly is Lucas Rupp, and that tells you everything about where Norwich City are as a football club. Not enough goals. It's just an absolute mess, and the players have been really poor. Dean Smith gave us hope, but I think tactically in recent weeks his decisions have been really poor, and whether he's the man to stay at Norwich City it is one that's subject to debate, and at the top of the club as well, where my main anger is actually towards Stuart Webber, because we've had the money this season, and okay, maybe Delia Smith, if Norwich City want to be a established Premier League team, I don't see how necessarily that can be under Delia Smith unless you have really shrewd business. But we've had the money this transfer window, and we've completely blown it, and Stuart Webber's accountable for that. In terms of the performance today, we started really poor. We haven't had a good first half in it feels like forever at the moment. A really poor first half and a really poor goal to give away, with Rodrigo opening the scoring. Bamford, was he in an offside position? Yes. Was he interfering with the play? No. I think it was a clear goal. Obviously the Norwich City players were fuming, as of course you are, it's attached to your team, but for me I'd be fuming if that goal was given against us. So Leeds make it 1-0. I think Norwich City should have had a penalty 7 minutes in. I think Rashica was stood on, and of course we did end up getting a penalty, which in the second half, which wasn't a penalty. But I think there was probably a penalty shout early on in the game, and that was at 0-0. But look, yes, some of the referee decisions and the VAR decisions today from pretty much every decision was wrong, but you can't be blaming that. Leeds dominated the first half, had some really good opportunities. Rafinha went close on a couple of occasions. Ben Gibson, who's been an absolute calamity in recent weeks, decides to almost self-destruct Norwich City in that first half, and Norwich City couldn't really get going. And really, really poor first half performance. And the second half, it was no better. Leeds pressed higher up the pitch. I think Lucas Rupp and Leeds Malou and Kenny McLean in that midfield three were completely overrun by the press of Leeds, by the intensity of Leeds. And yet again, this group of players, when they need to roll their sleeves up, they can't. They're not able to. In those big moments where they face adversity, they can't. And I look at previous years in the Championship and even some seasons when we've gone down in the Premier League, I think there's been that a little bit of rough and tumble and that togetherness and that group cohesion. These players, none of them particularly look like friends on the pitch. There's no real chemistry there, and the squad is made up of a variety of play styles. I don't know what Stuart Webber was thinking. And I know in hindsight it's very easy to say that, because after that summer window I was quite positive. But, you're Norwich City, you're going to try and be positive. Deep down, there was quite a few signings where you're like, I'm not sure if they're going to work out. Maybe we could have played it more safe and got more experience around the team, and we didn't do that. 10 million on Josh Sargent, okay, he had his incredible day against Watford, but we saw 2 years ago how in desperate need we were for a striker. Timo Pukki scored 8 goals this season. We were in desperate need of a striker, and we haven't been able to get that. The midfield, those signings have not been good enough in midfield. Rashik has been one good signing, but who else have we got in the other wing? And defensively, it's been a car crash. But yeah, second half, Leeds could have made it 3 or 4, had multiple chances, but Norwich City, to be fair, managed to stay in the game. John Rowe came on, and you got to. I think there's very few players that can hold their head held high. That coming out of this season, John Rowe's been one of them. I think in the short sporadic spells we've seen, he's been excellent. He hit the crossbar. But Norwich City were still in the game. Leeds were very wasteful, and we managed to get the goal. Ben Gibson with a long ball forward to Pukki, excellent from Timo Pukki, controls it, whips it across the 6-yard box, and Kenny McLean, who didn't have the best game, managed to stick it in. It was good from Kenny McLean. And then with 5 minutes to go, it's the game's on a knife edge, isn't it? From a Norwich City perspective, the Norwich City players run back to the centre circle, which I think is good. A draw would not have been good enough. Even a win today it still would have been incredibly hard. It was win or bust really for Norwich today. But they go for it. They commit players forward, which is what you want to see. Leeds, of course, go for it, and that last 5 minutes is absolutely frantic. But Norwich City make 2 careless mistakes. Ben Gibson loses his man, and then Brandon Williams, what on earth is he thinking against Rafinha? Goes in for the tackles, just got to stand him up. And then Rafinha's one-on-one and goal, takes it round Krul, puts it into the 6-yard box, and Leeds relegate Norwich, and it's a huge 3 points for Leeds. Norwich City almost equalise again. It was absolutely frantic. It was chaos. And Timo Pukki stabs at a shot goalwards, which is saved by Meslier as Tim Krul's running around the top of the pitch frantically. But Leeds win the game. Leeds have been in a terrible run of form, as were Brentford when they faced Norwich, and it was the same case of a long-come Norwich. Norwich City not being good enough for the whole game, and they deserve to lose this game of football. Players need to take accountability. The manager, Dean Smith, he had some hope. He reiterated some hope, but he's not been good enough. Tactically, some really poor decisions have been made. But the main anger for me, and I know a lot of anger is pointed towards the owners, but the main anger for me is that recruitment, which has been anything but good enough. The midfield has been completely lost, and the whole players and the whole team have just been. It's a team who are. You look at 3 years ago in those championship winning seasons, a lot of those players had character and a real personality. And I look at a lot of these players at the moment, and I think I look at this team at the moment, and I'm thinking this is a team who. I'm not even sure would break into the top 6 of the Championship. That's how bad. And this Norwich City team, yet again, need a massive rebuild. And is Stuart Webber the man to do that? I'm not so sure anymore. Thank you for watching this match review. Leeds relegate Norwich. Leeds 2, Norwich City 1.